Hello there. I'm so happy you're here with me tonight. Insomnia keeping you company? Well, now you have me too. Let's make these sleepless hours meaningful with some hushed stories, authentic experiences from real people everywhere. If you find yourself drawn to these tales, please like, comment, and subscribe so we can meet again tomorrow night. Now, let me take you away with our first story. On a cold January evening in 1993, the quiet town of Greenhithe in Kent, England, was going about its usual business. The streets were damp from recent rain, and the winter air hung heavy as people made their way home. It was the 18th of January, just 4 days after a young girl named Claire Tiltman had celebrated her 16th birthday. Claire was an only child, deeply loved by her parents, Cliff and Linda. That evening, she had left her home on Woodward Terrace and was walking along London Road. She had stopped at a local shop to purchase cigarettes and was on her way to visit her friend Victoria. The two girls had planned to discuss their college options after completing their GCSE exams. As Claire walked through the darkness, she was unaware that this ordinary journey would be her last. What happened in the following moments would cast a shadow over the community for decades to come. Michael Godfrey and his colleague Ron were driving along London Road when they noticed something concerning. Michael spotted someone kneeling at the side of the road, clearly in distress and struggling to breathe. He quickly pulled over and rushed to help, while Ron went to a nearby pub to call emergency services. Initially, Michael thought the young girl might have been hit by a car. Concerned about potential spinal injuries, he checked her back but found nothing obvious. As he gently laid her down, he noticed blood coming from her mouth and covering her clothing. Within moments, she had stopped breathing, and Michael began performing CPR. When the ambulance arrived, paramedics took over. As they cut open Claire's vest, they discovered the terrible truth. This wasn't a traffic accident. Claire had suffered multiple stab wounds, some as deep as 15 centimeters. Despite their efforts, at 7 p.m. that evening, Claire Tiltman was pronounced dead. The police quickly launched Operation Artist to find her killer. As with many small communities, news traveled fast. The following morning at school, while students were attending at different times due to mock exams, word began to spread. The head teacher heard that a 16-year-old named Claire had been killed, but didn't have all the details. When confirmation came that it was indeed Claire Tiltman from their school, the news was shared with her classmates. One of Claire's friends, Joanne, described the moment their year head and a police officer entered the classroom. Their head of year was visibly emotional, struggling to speak as they broke the devastating news that Claire had been murdered. Claire was remembered by those who knew her as a bright, shining presence, someone people were naturally drawn to. Known affectionately as Tilt to her friends, she had recently completed her mock exams and had aspirations of becoming a firefighter. She had even been volunteering with the fire service as part of her Duke of Edinburgh award. She was popular and sociable with many friends. Those close to her described her as feisty and loyal, with a wonderful sense of humor. She loved dancing to music by bands like INXS and Queen. Above all, she was extremely close to her parents, who adored her, and she idolized them in return. As police sealed off the area around London Road, extensive searches were carried out. Investigators determined that the attack had taken place in an alleyway just off the main road. There was very little forensic evidence to work with, which led police to consider that Claire might have been murdered by someone she knew. Understandably, the local community was frightened. Several witnesses reported seeing a man in a light-colored jacket walking along the road around the time of the attack. What was particularly concerning was that this wasn't the first attack of its kind in the area. In December 1988, approximately 4 years earlier, a 27-year-old woman had been attacked while returning home from a night shift. She had been abducted at knife point and taken to a nearby quarry, where she was assaulted and repeatedly stabbed before being left for dead. Remarkably, she survived the attack after lying injured through the night and was later able to get help from quarry workers in the morning. The day after Claire's murder, police received a call from a man claiming to have been driving in the area at the time. He reported seeing someone with dark, curly hair on a zebra crossing near the scene around 6:30 p.m. However, when interviewed a week later, his story changed. He now claimed to have seen someone walking along London Road between 5:45 and 5:55 p.m. and made no mention of the zebra crossing. He explained that he had been delivering leaflets with his mother, a local councillor, before returning to their home on Milton Street. Claire's funeral drew hundreds of mourners, including members of the Royal British Legion who had sung Happy Birthday to her just days before her murder. School friends and detectives working on the case were also present. Following a private service at Eltham Crematorium in southeast London, a wake was held at the Greenhithe Legion Club. After the wake, Claire's parents spoke about their grief and the haunting thought that her killer might still be at large, perhaps even among those who had attended the funeral. Linda, Claire's mother, expressed a strong gut feeling that the murderer had been present during the service. "You look around, and you hope it's someone you don't know. But we don't know," Linda said. "I felt that person could have been there even during the funeral. I will never, ever forgive that person. Never, ever. Whatever the reason, because what that person did, there was no excuse. That person's got to be caught." The police continued their appeals for information, believing that Claire had been murdered by someone she knew. Officers had been present at the funeral, watching, wondering if her killer was among the mourners. As days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, the anniversary of Claire's murder approached with her killer still not apprehended. Then, the community's worst fears were realized. On October 17, 1995, nearly 3 years after Claire's death, another attack occurred just minutes from where she had been murdered. A woman had been walking under a bridge known locally as the Arches when a man approached her, dragged her to the other side of the road, and repeatedly stabbed her. Fortunately, she survived. She later explained that when she screamed and fell to her knees, she did so hoping he would leave, and for some reason, he did. Although she couldn't provide a description of her attacker, a witness had noticed something significant. A distinctive white Ford car owned by a local milkman named Colin Ash Smith. Colin had already been interviewed several times in connection with Claire's murder. He was the son of Diane and Aubrey Ash Smith. His mother was a local councillor and had served as mayor. On the surface, Colin appeared ordinary. He had a girlfriend and seemed to lead a normal life. However, investigations would reveal a very different reality. When authorities searched Colin's property, they discovered he never left home without a knife. During their search, they found the weapon used in the attack under the Arches. But there was more. Hidden away, they also discovered a diary Colin had been keeping since the late 1980s. In it, he admitted to being responsible for the quarry attack in 1988, describing it as a masterpiece and 95% successful. When he had learned from news reports that his victim had survived, he had vowed to do a better job next time. A piece of the school tie that had broken during his attempt to strangle the quarry victim was found in Colin's Ford Capri, along with blood-stained clothing. The diaries painted a disturbing picture, revealing plans for more attacks, and his friends jokingly calling him the Swanscombe Psycho, though they never suspected the truth about his activities. Colin admitted to the quarry attack in 1988 and the stabbing at the Arches in 1995. On December 20th, 1996, he was sentenced to 3 life terms for these offenses. When discussing the 1995 attack, he explained that he had been angry that day, wrongly believing his partner was being unfaithful. He had arranged to collect her from work, but arrived 15 minutes late, by which time she had already left. I had it in my head that she was seeing someone else, and I thought she got a lift with him, he said. He then began driving around, looking for someone to take his anger out on. He considered attacking a man he saw, but changed his mind and decided to target a woman instead. I thought they will do instead, he explained. Colin stated that he felt relieved after the stabbing and didn't care what happened to his victim, though later he admitted feeling like a bit of a scumbag for his actions. She should have been able to go about her business without me coming across her, he said. After the attack, he had gone home to hide the knife before going to a pub to play pool. As the investigation continued, police discovered that Colin Ash Smith had attended Claire's funeral. He knew her from the British Legion Club, where both their families socialized. Claire had celebrated her 16th birthday there, and Colin had been present. In December 1995, Colin was interviewed again about Claire's murder. He claimed that the description police had given of a man seen in the area at the time matched someone he recognized from the Royal British Legion Club. He described this person as being in his 20s, about 5'9" or 10, with blonde hair, shaved at the back and sides, a roundish face, and what he called baby-type features. The description of the person you gave me, I recognize him, Colin told police. I know him from the RBL. He used to play pool, and he knew Claire. He used to play pool with Claire. Colin said he couldn't remember the man's name, but knew he had moved shortly after the murder. I asked my friend what happened to the bloke, because I had not seen him for a while. He said he lives at the back of me. Colin claimed he would recognize the street, but couldn't recall the name. He said the last time he had seen this individual was at Claire's funeral, though they hadn't spoken. When police followed up on this lead, they found that the man Colin had described hadn't had blonde hair for the past decade and was quickly ruled out as a suspect. This appeared to be an attempt by Colin to divert attention elsewhere. Despite the fact that Colin fit the offender profile, knew the area, and knew the victim, there was a significant obstacle. He had an alibi. His mother, Diane, who was the town mayor and a local councillor, claimed he had been with her that evening, delivering leaflets. However, this alibi would later prove to be false. It was eventually revealed that Colin was the person who had called the police the day after Claire's murder, reporting seeing a man with dark curly hair at the crossing. Furthermore, both his parents were aware that he carried a knife, and after Claire's murder, his father had taken it from him and disposed of it. In 1997, Colin's father, Aubrey, was sentenced to 12 months in prison for perverting the course of justice. Shortly before their home was due to be searched in connection with Claire's murder, he had destroyed Colin's knife by boiling it, taking it apart, and discarding the pieces. The judge noted that this raised serious questions about Colin's involvement in Claire's murder, questions that might have been answered if the knife had not been destroyed. Outside the court, Colin's mother Diane insisted that neither she, Aubrey, nor Colin had anything to do with Claire's murder. However, Claire's parents remained convinced that Colin was responsible for their daughter's death. As the years passed, the case grew colder. 10 years after Claire's murder, a memorial plaque placed on London Road was vandalized, pulled from the wall in an act that shocked the community. Yet the people of Greenhithe had not forgotten Claire. Her school friends and teachers continued to send Christmas cards to her parents, and in the Tiltman home, Claire's last school photograph hung on the wall alongside the plaque she had received from the fire station for her volunteer work. Linda and Cliff Tiltman lived with the unbearable pain of knowing their daughter's killer remained free. You look around, and you hope that it's someone you don't know, but we don't know, Linda had said. I will never, ever forgive that person for whatever reason. That person's got to be caught. In 2003, a significant change occurred in the legal landscape. The Criminal Justice Act came into effect, which meant that jurors would now be allowed to hear about a defendant's bad character and previous convictions during a trial. This change would prove crucial for Claire's case, but more tragedy would strike the Tiltman family first. In 2008, Claire's mother, Linda, passed away from cancer at just 56 years old. 4 years later, on the anniversary of Claire's death in 2012, her father, Cliff, issued a plea for new information. It would mean everything. I've never given up hope, never have done, never will do. It's been, obviously, 17 years, a long time. I can't begin to put into words how this has affected our family. She would have been 35 now. I miss her to bits. Claire has gone. Her mom is gone. There is now only me. I try to stay strong, but will still hide and cry my eyes out for an hour. Tragically, on September 12th of that year, Cliff also passed away at the age of 62. Detective Chief Inspector Rob Vinson commented, "Last month, a good man went to his grave without ever seeing justice being served for the murder of his only daughter. This isn't the end of our investigation. We have always maintained that someone has information about this murder, and we will continue to investigate it." The following year, on the 20th anniversary of Claire's death, her friends held a candlelit walk along the route she had taken that night, hoping to generate new leads. The then Prime Minister, David Cameron, joined the appeal for information and pledged the government's support for the inquiry. Around this time, a cold case review was launched in an effort to finally solve the murder. As Colin Ash Smith remained a person of interest, investigators spoke with someone who had shared a prison cell with him, a man named Stefan. He had something significant to share. Stefan recalled Colin mentioning something about a zebra crossing. The impression I got from Colin was that he was telling me that he was angry and was looking for something or someone, Stefan said. He said he had seen someone on the crossing and snapped and attacked. This was noteworthy because there had been no crossings near the sites of the two attacks Colin had been convicted for, but there had been one at the location of Claire's murder. Following Stefan's statement, in September 2013, Colin's family home in Kent was searched. Investigators discovered a newspaper marking the 1-year anniversary of Claire's death. The change in the law meant that Colin's diaries, which detailed his attacks and plans, could now be used as evidence. Nigel Pilkington, head of the complex casework unit for the Crown Prosecution Service Southeast, explained, "Although bad character provisions came into force in 2003, we were all a bit unsure about how it could be used. What is very clear is we can't run a case on bad character alone. It wouldn't be fair to try somebody on just their record." He continued, "We say the similarities of this offending means that the person who attacked in 1995 had the identity of the attacker of Claire Tiltman. Bad character isn't just about previous convictions. It's about the other aspects of character, his sexual fantasies, and his other assaults and attacks. How likely is it that an attack of almost an exact similar nature takes place in 1995 in which a person gets stabbed for no reason 14 times, and that is exactly what happened to Claire. This was an attack that was entirely motiveless, which is an extremely rare event. On February 12, 2014, an announcement was made. Nigel Pilkington stated, "In November 2012, I received a file of evidence from the Kent and Essex Serious Crimes Directorate relating to the murder of Claire Tiltman on the 18th of January, 1993. The investigation by the police has been a lengthy and complex one. Following further investigation, my review of all the evidence in the case has now been completed, and I have concluded that there is sufficient evidence and that it is in the public interest to prosecute Colin Ash Smith for the murder of Claire Tiltman. Colin was charged with murder on the same day he was due to be considered for release by the parole board for his other attacks. Detective Superintendent Rob Vincent from the cold case team remarked that Claire Tiltman's unsolved death had been one of the longest-running cases for Kent Police and had remained at the forefront of investigators' minds for over 2 decades. On November 6th, Colin Ash Smith's trial began. Prosecutor Brian Altman QC argued that Colin had derived a warped pleasure from the savage attack on Claire. This was a killing for the sake of killing, he said, carried out by a ruthless and predatory armed killer who attacked his chosen victim rapidly and stealthily, allowing her no time for defense or escape. During the trial, Colin admitted that he would go for walks at night carrying a knife, looking for someone to attack. "I would wait for my mom and dad to go to sleep first, and then I would go out," he said. "I was 19 or 20. That was the first time I started doing it in 1988. I used to do it quite regularly. I used to call them my midnight walks. I was hoping I would see someone and provoke someone into attacking me." When asked why he had attacked the woman at the quarry in 1988, he replied, "I wanted to feel empowered, that I had control over someone, that I wasn't a doormat." The description of the man seen near the crossing matched Colin, including the light-colored jacket he owned, which he had worn both on the night of Claire's murder and to her funeral. Colin spoke about knowing Claire's parents after her death. "My dad and I volunteered to help support them in any way we could through the British Legion Club, and I got to know them reasonably well." Her parents. When questioned about women, Colin stated, "I didn't like them because I felt they had power over me. My own perception of them was that I couldn't trust them because they used me. I felt worthless, low self-esteem. I had no confidence around other people. I wasn't happy around most people." He also admitted to having a collection of between 20 and 30 knives, always carrying one with him. His weapons collection also included a crossbow, an air rifle, an air pistol, and an imitation Magnum. Stefan's testimony at the trial became complicated when he stated that he may have confused Colin's comments with those of another inmate, and said he only had a vague understanding of the crimes Colin had been convicted of. "One of the things we would joke about was that he'd stabbed his victim multiple times and missed every vital organ," Stefan said. "The joke was that we wouldn't have him on the prison darts team as a result." He claimed that medication had affected his memory, and he couldn't clearly recall his conversation with law enforcement the previous year. The prosecution suggested that Colin had called the police the day after Claire's murder because he feared someone had seen him or his vehicle that night. In doing so, and then changing his story, he had inadvertently placed himself in the area at the time of the murder. Though Claire's parents did not live to see the trial, her friends brought a photograph of them to court to ensure they were not forgotten. Her best friend Lisa traveled from Scotland to attend, wanting Claire to be remembered for who she was and her close relationship with her family. After a 5-week trial and 3.5 hours of deliberation, on December 11, 2014, the jury returned with their verdict. Colin Ash Smith was found guilty of murdering Claire Tiltman. He showed no emotion as the verdict was read. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 21 years. Colin refused to appear for sentencing and declined to listen to the victim impact statements. Judge Mr. Justice Sweeney said, "I have no doubt that this was a premeditated murder that you carried out because of the feeling of power that it gave you. In so doing, you not only ended Claire's young life, which was so full of promise, but you also caused unbearable grief and upset to her family and friends." The prosecutor read statements from Claire's best friend Lisa and her uncle Roger, detailing the devastation caused by her murder, especially for Cliff and Linda. Her uncle said that all of their hopes and dreams had ended the night Claire was killed. While serving his sentence at HMP Durham, Colin launched an appeal, claiming that the trial judge had wrongly allowed prejudicial evidence to be presented to the jury. The Court of Appeal dismissed his application, with Lord Justice Davis describing his case as unarguable. The search for Claire's killer had been one of the largest investigations Kent Police had ever undertaken. More than 2,500 statements were taken, 1,500 witnesses were interviewed, and there were 40,000 documents and over 20,000 people on the database. In the years since the verdict, the community has ensured that Claire Tiltman is not forgotten. A road in Greenhithe was named after her, and a memorial bench was installed. Another road was renamed Tiltman Avenue by Dartford Council in 2022. A new eco-center bearing Claire's name was opened, used for various eco-friendly and educational activities for children and young people. Her friend Emma remarked that it was wonderful to see something so positive associated with Claire. To mark the 30th anniversary of her death in 2023, Stone Parish Council planted Claire roses in her memory. The story of Claire Tiltman is indeed a tragic one, a young woman whose future was violently taken from her, with all her dreams and potential lost. Yet it is also a story of perseverance, of a community and investigators who refused to let her case go unsolved, and who fought for justice even when it seemed out of reach. Perhaps the Justice for Claire group best summarized the case in their statement following the sentencing. It is nearly 22 years since Claire was cruelly taken away from us at the age of just 16. Today, we finally know who murdered her. What we will never understand is why. We want to thank Kent Police and the CPS for all their hard work on the case, and, most importantly, for never, ever giving up. Some of the police officers involved in this case have shown a level of dedication far above and beyond the call of duty for over 2 decades, and we can never thank them enough. Like them, we have always believed that one day there would be justice for Claire, and today, that has at last been done. But we should not be here speaking to you today. It should be Claire's parents, Linda and Cliff. This murder destroyed an entire family, and the ripples are still being felt today. Today, we reclaim our friend and remember her for the wonderful person she was, rather than what happened to her. We are certain by now that she would have fulfilled her ambition of becoming a firefighter. Her murder stopped her achieving that dream, and we can only wonder what else it stopped her from doing. She could have had a successful career and saved lives, become a wife and mother. It deprived Linda and Cliff of seeing their daughter grow up and thrive. We will never get Claire back, and we will never forget her. But now both she and her beloved parents can finally rest in peace knowing her murderer has at last been brought to justice.
It was a warm August day in 2019 in Claremont, Cape Town, South Africa. The kind of day where the afternoon sun bathes everything in a soft golden light, and the streets are filled with weekend errands and gentle movement. In Claremont lived a young woman named Uyenene Merwetiana, fondly called Nene by everyone who knew her. At 19 years of age, Nene was a first-year student at the University of Cape Town studying film and media. Her path had always been marked by dedication and focus. From an early age, Nene showed signs of being someone who cared deeply about others. She had been part of the student council throughout her school years and volunteered regularly in her community. Now, at university, she participated in various sports societies, balancing her academic pursuits with active involvement in campus life. Nene's mother described her daughter as a fighter, someone who encouraged those around her to speak their truth and become the strongest versions of themselves. She was everyone's cheerleader, beyond her studies in film and media. Nene harbored a love for fashion and traveling, dreaming of experiencing as much of the world as she could. Her approach to life was characterized by an infectious energy and fearlessness that drew people to her. Her brother Isona noted how different they were. She had a fearless spirit about her and was very outgoing. He shared, she tended to make people in the room comfortable when she was around. She was the one in the household holding us accountable. That was special about her. Nene was the kind of person who lifted others up, who made them feel seen and valued, who pushed them toward growth with gentle persistence. August 24th, 2019 began as an ordinary Saturday. Nene was catching up on chores, schoolwork, and spending time with friends. She had ordered some clothes online and after waiting 2 weeks for delivery, decided to visit the Claremont post office to collect her package. Upon arrival at the post office, she was informed there had been a power cut and the systems were down. Although her parcel was physically there, she couldn't receive it immediately. Power cuts were not uncommon in the area, and the postal employee told her to return around 2 p.m. when everything should be operational again. Nene wasn't bothered by this delay. She had other errands to run around town anyway, and planned to take a taxi back to the post office later. She went about her day moving through the quiet streets of Claremont, attending to her tasks with her usual diligence. As the afternoon gave way to evening, a soft concern began to settle among those who knew Nene. No one had heard from her, and she hadn't returned to her residence for dinner. She wasn't answering her phone, which was unusual for someone as conscientious as Nene. For someone who maintained regular contact and followed through on her commitments, this silence was concerning. Her absence at dinner, the unanswered calls, these small details formed a picture that didn't align with Nene's established patterns. Something felt amiss in the gentle rhythm of what should have been an ordinary day. Concern quickly transformed into action. Before long, a thorough search throughout the city was underway. Over the following days, Nene's family, university, and student residence hired 3 private investigators to work alongside the police. Online, the hashtag #BringNeNe began trending, a digital extension of the physical search taking place across Cape Town. The University of Cape Town released a statement expressing their support and announcing increased security measures on campus. A community was coming together, united in their concern for a young woman whose absence was deeply felt. The 24-hour mark passed without news, and then 48 hours. The searches intensified, but there was no trace of Nene. According to police reports, she was last seen on Saturday afternoon in the Claremont area, heading toward the post office. Her worried friends organized prayer meetings, describing Nene as a loving person with a gentle soul. Nene is a beautiful, strong, independent woman. One friend shared, "She is so independent, and she's very responsible, and she's just a lovely, genuine person." Another friend sent a message directly to Nene. "I just want to say we are looking for you. We're doing what we can. Don't lose hope. We know that you need us, and we've got you." The family hired a private investigator to expedite the search process. South Africans followed the case, closely moved by the uncertain fate of a promising young woman. As the investigation continued, more details about Nene's last known movements emerged. Some witnesses thought they had seen her around 5 p.m. near a hair salon in Mowbray, approximately a 10-minute drive from her residence, but this sighting was eventually ruled out. What was confirmed was that after running several errands in town, Nene had briefly returned to her accommodation before taking a taxi back to the post office. The Claremont post office was situated on a busy road between a high school and a police station, just a short distance from her residence. The taxi driver later stated that he had dropped Nene across the road from the post office at precisely 2:09 p.m. This was verified by cameras on a nearby storefront. According to the driver, Nene appeared completely fine when she left his vehicle. Nothing seemed unusual or concerning. She crossed the road toward the post office, and that was the last confirmed sighting of her. The post office itself didn't have functioning security cameras, so investigators interviewed all employees. One of these was 42-year-old Leander Botha, who had signed for Nene's parcel and told her to return at 2 p.m. to collect it. Investigators discovered that Leander was the only person still in the building when Nene returned. There were several unusual circumstances that gradually came to light. Leander had changed shifts with a co-worker, telling her she could go home early, while he would lock up alone. The post office normally closed at 1 p.m. on Saturdays, making it strange that Leander would wait an additional hour after closing time for a single customer to collect one parcel. Further investigation revealed that Nene's parcel had actually arrived on August 16th, and Leander had registered it the same day, but waited an entire week before contacting her. Nene had visited the post office earlier that week to inquire about her package, so Leander knew she was waiting for it. Yet when she arrived on August 24th, he again delayed asking her to return when the post office would be officially closed. The case took a significant turn when authorities received an anonymous tip from someone at the post office. This person had noticed blood on a mop when the building reopened after the weekend. A forensic examination of the premises revealed Nene's blood near the safe. On August 29th, 5 days after Nene went missing, police arrested Leander Botha. Nene's blood had been found both inside his car and on his shoe. What had begun as a missing persons case was now a murder investigation. Unknown to most people, following the case, a woman's body had already been discovered in Kaletcha Township on August 26th. The remains had been badly burned and buried in a shallow hole beside an unused railway track. DNA tests were being conducted to confirm the identity. But authorities now knew it was Nene Leander, had revealed the location of her remains. As this information came to light, students at the University of Cape Town gathered for a vigil that continued long into the night. Similar gatherings took place across the country, the collective grief deepening as people realized they had been searching hopefully for someone who was already gone. Nene's mother expressed her guilt and anger at not being able to protect her daughter. Among all the places she had warned Nene to be careful of, a post office on a Saturday afternoon had never seemed like a place of danger. Leander Boda confessed to the crime soon after his arrest. He described a premeditated attack, explaining that he had timed Nene's return to the post office to ensure no one else would be present, intending to make sexual advances toward her. According to his statement, when Nene entered the empty building and took out her purse, Leander locked the door and approached her. Nene pushed him away and began to panic and call for help. Leander proceeded to rape her twice. Throughout the assault, Nene fought back forcefully, even attempting to reach the locked door to escape. In his confession, Leander stated that he pushed her to the ground as she pleaded for her life. He began to strangle her, but she continued to resist. He then took a 2-kilogram weight used for weighing packages and struck her repeatedly until she died. After Nene's death, Leander placed her body in a safe, covering it with cushions, a blanket, and some of his clothes. He then left the post office and visited several bars, behaving as though nothing unusual had happened. The following day, Sunday, when the post office was closed and no employees were present, Leander returned. He convinced the security officer who patrolled the area to let him park his car in the post office precinct. He then transferred Nene's body into a postal sack and drove nearly an hour to a secluded area near an unused railway track. There, he placed her in a shallow hole and set her body on fire. Afterward, he took his car to be cleaned. On Monday, while search efforts for Nene were underway across the city, Leander visited the shop across from the post office, the same place where Nene had been dropped off by her taxi. He asked to review their security camera footage, claiming he had left something outside that had been stolen. The shop complied, but their camera wasn't positioned to capture the post office entrance. People who knew Leander described him in conflicting ways. He was known to be quiet and kept to himself, and at the time was going through a divorce. Investigation revealed he had a criminal record dating back to the 1990s and had been accused of rape in 2014, though those charges had been dropped. While the magistrate initially ruled that Leander could not be identified publicly, his name had already circulated widely on social media. Some neighbors described him as soft-spoken and religious, mentioning that he carried a Bible and offered Bible studies and prayers to others. Other accounts painted a different picture, with several women stating they had found him unsettling and that he made them uncomfortable. Hundreds of mourners gathered in East London to say goodbye to Nene. The funeral was emotional, with many paying tribute to a young woman who had touched so many lives. She was remembered as honest, beautiful, vibrant, intelligent, gentle, brave, and unique. One speaker addressed Nene directly. "I'm sorry that I wasn't able to fight for you. I'm so proud of you. Your fight is now our fight." Another reflected on her impact. Even though she was with us for a short time, she made a big impact on the people that she interacted with personally and on a day-to-day. And even after that, in her death, she made a big impact. And so both her presence and her absence are felt. And we'd like to thank you for lending her to us so that we could spend that time with her. The reaction to Nene's murder extended far beyond personal grief. Throughout September 2019, protests against gender-based violence reached unprecedented levels across South Africa. Thousands marched in the streets, and the hashtag #AmyNext spread widely across social media. The demonstrations drew supporters from all walks of life united in their demand for change. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa visited Nine's family to express his condolences personally. The case had captured national attention, highlighting the epidemic of violence against women in the country. In Leander's neighborhood, residents expressed their anger by setting fire to his house. 14 firefighters worked to contain the blaze while facing a crowd who believed Leander might have been released on bail. Some residents had even dug a hole at the property, stating their intention to bury him there if he was found inside. One resident expressed their sense of betrayal. "He fooled all of us pretending to be a man of God while he is a monster." A 19-year-old student voiced the fear and frustration felt by many young women. "I am lean in, and I'm angry, I'm tired. We're tired of being told to work in groups. We're tired of being told to carry pepper spray. We're tired of being told how to survive. We want to live." University representatives acknowledge the wider context of the tragedy. The students are also very shocked and saddened, and as you say, also traumatized. I think they are especially traumatized by knowing that this is not an isolated incident, and that the levels of gender-based violence in this country are unacceptably high. Another community member reflected, "I think we all are touched by this in one way or another. We all feel the trauma. We all feel the pain. And we all feel the anger." A young woman shared her personal reaction. "When this hit us yesterday, it was just, yeah, it happened. But then when I got home last night, that's when it really hit me. Like, okay, this actually happened, and you have to be cautious of where you go. You just really can't trust people. Seriously, you really can't." The Claremont Post Office temporarily closed following the incident. Local residents called for it to be permanently closed and converted into a shelter for women and children, or a memorial center in remembrance of Nine, the chairperson for Harfield Village. James Fernie noted that several factors would need to be considered before the post office could be permanently closed. Nine's case sparked outrage throughout South Africa and beyond. Many demanded action to address the country's femicide rate, which according to the World Health Organization was 5 times the global average. In the same month as Nine's murder, 5 other young women in Cape Town were killed in violent circumstances. At the time, South Africa also had one of the highest rates of rape in the world. A petition garnering more than 600,000 signatures called for the reinstatement of the death penalty, not just for murder, but also for rape and sexually related crimes. In court, Leander Botha pleaded guilty to rape and murder. When asked if he understood the charges against him, he replied, "Yes, I hear the charges." Through his legal representatives, Leander acknowledged his actions. "I admit that I acted with full appreciation of the wrongfulness of my actions, and I am liable for my actions, as I had the intention to rape and kill the deceased." The court sentenced Leander to 3 life sentences plus 5 years. For the first count of rape, he received life imprisonment. For the second count of rape, he received another life sentence. For the murder of Nine, he received a 3rd life sentence. An additional 5-year direct sentence was added to these. Under South African law, Leander would be eligible for parole consideration after serving 25 years of his sentence. The judge addressed Nene's family during sentencing, acknowledging her courage. She fought bravely and courageously. This was indeed a heinous and cruel act and crime. Though it may be cold comfort for you today, it is not without significance that she was a fighter and clearly had a fighting spirit for her life. Tanyamas. Nene's uncle expressed the family's response to the sentence. The judgment won't in any manner replace you, Nene, but we do appreciate it. We don't have any sympathy for him. He did what he did. In fact, this crime for us is a classic act of man's inhumanity. The family stated they had no interest in an apology from Leander. As the judge noted, no sentence or punishment that this court can or had imposed would bring back your lovely daughter. A family representative described the outcome as a pocket of excellence on the part of the criminal justice system. After beginning his sentence, Leander faced additional legal proceedings. The attempted rape charge from 2014 that had previously been dropped was reinstated. During this trial, Leander testified that he had been in a relationship with a nursing student at the time, but there had been infidelity issues. He claimed that he had gone to his girlfriend's college where security guards allowed him to enter without following proper protocols. According to his testimony, he couldn't find his girlfriend in her room, so he went to the female showers where he heard water running. Thinking his girlfriend might be there with another woman, he entered. Instead, he encountered a woman he didn't know who screamed upon seeing him and fled, Leander stated. Upon seeing me, she was completely taken aback. She screamed. It was so loud, and in a fright, I jumped back down. I could not even think. Then I just ran out of the shower, ran out of the bathroom. They could see that this lady is taken by this. He claimed that he returned to the shower to explain his presence, but found the woman on the ground wrapped in a towel and crying hysterically. He denied any physical contact with her. The woman's account differed significantly. She alleged that Leander had violently attacked and raped her in the showers. However, in early 2025, Leander was found not guilty in this case. Following Nene's murder, an investigation was launched into how Leander had remained employed at the post office despite his previous criminal convictions. A spokesperson confirmed that he had not been properly screened when appointed either as a part-time or full-time employee. Leander had falsely declared that he had no criminal record. The investigation further revealed that the state security agency had identified hundreds of other postal employees with criminal records. In response, the Department of Justice and Correctional Services published 3 new draft bills intended to introduce stricter punishments for criminals in South Africa. Some of the notable changes proposed in these bills included regulating sentences for offenses committed against vulnerable persons, facilitating the process of obtaining protection orders against acts of domestic violence, and expanding the categories of sex offenders whose names must be included in the National Register for Sex Offenders. The president announced that following the graduation of 5,000 police trainees in the previous year, an additional 7,000 new police trainees had been enlisted to strengthen local policing. Nene's impact continued long after her passing. She had profoundly touched everyone in her life, whether they knew her personally or learned of her through the tragic circumstances reported in the media. A scholarship and foundation were established in her name, awareness walks, youth group initiatives, and even a football club were created to honor her memory. She remained an important part of her community and beyond. Kingswood College, Nene's former school, honored her posthumously. Kingswood College had the opportunity of having her as part of our family. They established the Nene Award, presented to students who demonstrate exceptional human courage and awareness of social justice. One of her friends shared on social media, "I'm writing this during a sleepover with some of our closest friends. We're distracting ourselves with movies and music, but there's a wavering sadness in the room. The pain is so great. It holds me down when I sleep and wakes me up in the morning. I'm too young to bury a friend, and you are too young to be buried." Her brother Isona reflected on how he preserved her memory. "I always think of the memories we had together, and I tend to go through periods of reflection. This is what I'm heading towards, making her proud. And sometimes I feel like I'm falling short, and that's when I try to work towards a higher standard for myself. And that's how I keep her memory alive inside of myself." The quiet evening settles now around this story, a story that changed a nation's conversation about violence and justice, a story of a young woman whose brief life continues to inspire positive change. On the cool evening of October 12, 2012, emergency dispatchers in Highland Heights, Kentucky, received a call that would begin a lengthy investigation. The voice belonged to 21-year-old Shayna Hubers, who was calling from a condominium just minutes from downtown Cincinnati. "I killed my boyfriend in self-defense," she stated calmly to the dispatcher. When asked for her location, she provided the address. "I'm at 12 Meadow Lane, Highland Heights." The dispatcher sought to gather more information, asking what weapon had been used. Shayna confirmed she had used a gun and believed her boyfriend was deceased. "Not even that long, 15 minutes ago," she responded when questioned about the timing. As the call continued, Shayna identified the victim as Ryan Poston, a 29-year-old attorney from Cincinnati. She described him as significantly larger than herself. She was 5'8" and 120 pounds, while he stood at 6'3" and weighed approximately 200 pounds. She claimed Ryan had become physically aggressive, saying, "He beat me and tried to carry me out of the house, and I came back in to get my things, and he was right in front of me, and he reached down and grabbed the gun." Shayna detailed how Ryan had allegedly slammed her into a couch. Though she acknowledged not having visible injuries, she emphasized feeling frightened due to the size difference between them. "He put me down from the door, all the way to the couch. When they come here, they'll see how far that is across the room," she told the dispatcher. When asked how many times she had fired the weapon, Shayna explained that she had continued shooting because Ryan was still moving. "He was twitching, and you know he was going to die, so I shot him again." When authorities arrived at the residence, they discovered 29-year-old Ryan Poston's body positioned face down on the floor between a table and a radiator. Blood covered the wall and table nearby. The investigation would determine that Shayna had shot him 6 times at close range with his own gun. Ryan Poston grew up in Fort Mitchell, Kentucky, in a close-knit family environment. Though his parents, Jay and Lisa, had divorced during his childhood, the family maintained strong relationships. Ryan developed a particularly close bond with his stepfather, Peter Carter, eventually changing his middle name to Carter as a gesture of affection and respect. He became a protective older brother to his 3 younger half-sisters, Allison Elizabeth and Catherine. From an early age, Ryan displayed a studious nature and strong work ethic qualities that would define his approach to life. His educational journey included time spent studying in both the Philippines and Switzerland during his high school years, he later attended Indiana University, where he pursued an ambitious academic program with triple majors in geography, history, and political science. Ryan had always been clear about his professional aspirations. He wanted to become an attorney. After completing his education, he worked diligently to establish his career in law. According to his father, Ryan was thoroughly dedicated to his profession, often bringing work home and investing significant time in his cases. His compassion for clients was particularly notable. He sometimes accepted cases without payment when individuals couldn't afford his services. As his father observed, he took their phone calls and he made them feel like they were the only person on earth. Their problems were his problems, and he wanted to solve them. A friend described Ryan as feisty in his professional capacity, commanding attention when entering a room while maintaining a quieter, more reserved demeanor in his personal life. The friend noted that Ryan typically avoided confrontation outside of his professional setting. Ryan's dedication to his career led him to become one of the youngest attorneys in Kentucky to establish an independent law practice. He harbored hopes of potentially running for public office someday, continuing to build on his professional success. In April 2011, Ryan was transitioning from a previous relationship with his girlfriend Lauren. The breakup had been amicable, primarily due to both individuals' busy work schedules, though Lauren had maintained hope that they might reconcile in the future. During this period, Ryan came across Shayna Huber's Facebook profile through mutual connections, including his cousin. He initiated contact by appreciating some of her photographs. After several months of online communication, Ryan and Shayna, who had recently turned 20, arranged to meet in person. Shayna was studying psychology at Kentucky University on a scholarship, while Ryan was living approximately 100 miles away in his new condominium. Despite the geographic distance and an almost decade-age difference, their relationship developed quickly. Shayna soon found herself introduced to Ryan's family and joining them for holiday gatherings, a significant step given the importance Ryan placed on his family's opinions. Friends described Shayna as charming, attractive, and intellectually gifted. She had participated in advanced academic programs throughout her childhood and demonstrated a natural talent for performance arts, particularly musical theater. Her naturally dramatic personality seemed well suited to theatrical pursuits, academically accomplished. Shayna completed her university studies ahead of schedule and advanced to master's level work. On paper, Ryan and Shayna appeared compatible, both intelligent, ambitious, and driven. However, the dynamics of their relationship would eventually prove far more complicated than this initial impression suggested. Following the shooting, law enforcement officers transported Shayna to the police station to document her account of events. Though she was advised of her Miranda rights and her right to legal representation, Shayna chose to continue speaking without an attorney present. She engaged extensively with officers, providing detailed accounts of her relationship with Ryan and the events preceding his death. "Do you smoke?" an officer asked as they settled in for the interview. "You're fine." Shayna proceeded to explain her perspective on the relationship, describing Ryan as consistently cold and critical. She claimed he had made hurtful comments about her appearance and suggested she pursue plastic surgery and weight loss. According to Shayna, his behavior had escalated to physical aggression on the night of October 12th. "I knew he was violent. I knew he was crazy," she told investigators. "He was screaming at me, telling me I was a hillbilly, and he hates me. He was throwing me around the room, like picking me up, and had my face and stuff, pulled me by the ponytail of my hair. I had my head banged into two different things tonight. Picking me up and throwing me, Shayna explained that Ryan kept firearms readily accessible throughout his apartment. "There's loaded guns in the house," she stated. "He's picked up a gun and pointed at my face as a joke." She described the shooting itself in fragmented sentences. "The gun's laying on the table, and I just picked up the gun, and in the middle of him doing something with his arm or saying something crazy shot him." She continued providing disturbing details about her thoughts during the incident. "He's going to die or have a completely deformed face. He's very vain and wants to get a nose job, just that kind of person. And I shot him right here." She gestured to her face. "I gave him his nose job." Shayna described the sequence of shots. "I shot him probably 6 times. Shot him in the head. He fell onto the ground. He was laying like this. His glasses were still on. He was twitching some more. I shot him a couple more times just to make sure he was dead." Between questioning sessions, officers observed Shayna's behavior through surveillance cameras. Footage captured her singing "Amazing Grace," dancing around the room and making statements like, "I killed him. I did it. Yes, I did it." During these moments, when she believed she wasn't being watched, her demeanor appeared markedly different from her presentation during formal questioning. One detective noted that Shayna would transition rapidly between apparent emotional distress and complete composure. The officer commented that while she would engage in what appeared to be crying, he never observed actual tears. Her primary concerns seemed centered on whether she would be allowed to shower and keep her phone if incarcerated. "If you go to jail, are you allowed to keep your cell phone? When they go to jail, can you shower? Do you just get really dirty?" Her rapid, continuous speech led officers to rotate in and out of the interview room to take breaks from the intense interaction. One thing that also stood out as odd, noted an investigator, was that Shayna had first called her mother after the shooting, waiting approximately 15 minutes before contacting emergency services. As investigators assembled the evidence, they found numerous inconsistencies in Shayna's account. The physical condition of the apartment contradicted her description of a violent altercation. She had mentioned being thrown into a bookcase, yet items on the shelves remained neatly arranged with no signs of disturbance. Additionally, her account of the gun's location and the positioning of both herself and Ryan during the incident changed multiple times throughout her statements. When officers photographed Shayna's body to document evidence of the alleged physical assault, they found only minor bruising that seemed insufficient to corroborate the level of violence she had described. Some marks appeared to be older injuries, unrelated to the events of that evening. A particularly revealing detail emerged regarding Shayna's actions when Ryan allegedly locked himself in his bedroom. During their dispute, rather than taking the opportunity to leave the residence, Shayna had conducted internet searches for methods to unlock doors and pick locks with hairpins. She had successfully gained entry to the bedroom, after which Ryan had returned to the table area. This suggested Ryan might have been attempting to distance himself from Shayna, rather than acting as an aggressor. The autopsy provided crucial information that contradicted Shayna's version of events. Ryan had sustained 6 gunshot wounds, with the first bullet entering the right side of his head at a downward angle. This trajectory indicated that Ryan had been seated not standing or approaching Shayna when the initial shot was fired. This single shot would have incapacitated him, making the subsequent 5 bullets unnecessary for self-defense. After a thorough 3-hour interview, investigators charged 21-year-old Shayna Hubers with murder. She was held on a $1 $5 million bond. The evidence suggested a scenario in which Shayna had fired the first shot while standing adjacent to Ryan as he sat at the table. As he collapsed to the floor, she had continued to discharge the weapon multiple times. Ryan's father, Jay, experienced profound grief upon visiting his son's apartment after the investigation. "I just lay down next to it and screamed," he recalled. "I screamed at God, and I screamed at just everything." Jay returned to the apartment daily, eventually feeling compelled to personally clean the bloodstains. "I just felt this need to take care of my son like I had for years," he explained. "I didn't feel like it was right for anyone else to do it except me. I didn't want some stranger coming in there and seeing what happened to my child. I wanted it to go away." Those who knew Ryan consistently described him as gentle and non-confrontational in his personal life, making Shayna's characterization of him as abusive seem implausible. Ryan's best friend, Allie, recalled feeling immediate misgivings upon first meeting Shayna. She made it clear that Ryan was hers and he had no room for friends, especially female friends, Allie observed. She was glued to him all night in a way that frankly made people feel uncomfortable. Ryan's former girlfriend noted that nothing about Shayna's descriptions of their relationship aligned with her own experiences with him. While acknowledging that relationships can vary, she found it difficult to reconcile Shayna's claims with the person she had known. As investigators reviewed phone records and messages, a clearer picture of Ryan and Shayna's relationship emerged. Despite initial chemistry, their 18-month on and off relationship had become increasingly strained. Ryan faced additional pressures beyond relationship difficulties, including a lawsuit from a former business partner after establishing his independent practice. Shayna struggled with the boundaries Ryan attempted to establish. Records showed a significant imbalance in their communication. For every message Ryan sent, Shayna would respond with approximately 50. On one occasion, she sent 75 texts within a single hour. The total communication history contained hundreds of thousands of messages. When Ryan would request space, Shayna typically responded by driving to his condominium, expressing emotional distress and pleading for reconciliation. Ryan's messages to friends revealed his growing concern about her behavior. "Literally, probably the craziest person I have ever met," he wrote to Allie. "She almost scares me." To another friend, he mentioned, "This is getting to be restraining order level crazy." Under Kentucky law, at that time, Ryan did not qualify to file for a restraining order, as such legal protections required the parties to have been married or cohabiting, conditions that did not apply to their situation. At 12:30 a.m. on one occasion, Ryan arrived at his father's home with an overnight bag and laptop, seeking a place to stay to avoid Shayna, who was still at his condominium. His father welcomed him, but encouraged him to address the situation. As Jay closed his son's door that night, he could hear Ryan's phone continuously receiving messages and calls from Shayna. The following morning, Jay observed his son's apparent depression and stress before Ryan returned to his now empty condominium. One of Ryan's neighbors, who had become acquainted with Shayna, mentioned seeing bruises that Shayna attributed to Ryan. However, the neighbor also observed Shayna cooking and cleaning for Ryan, purchasing gifts for him, and generally appearing attentive. Friends from Shayna's high school years suggested this behavior wasn't motivated by affection, but represented Shayna's typical response to rejection or jealousy. They described her as persistent, to the point of intrusion when faced with situations not going her way. Shayna appeared aware at some level of the imbalance in their relationship. She texted a friend saying, "He says he's only with me because I make him feel awful about it when I cry." Those who knew Ryan suggested he felt trapped, hesitant to upset Shayna, because her reaction would be even more difficult to manage, yet also wanting to end the relationship. Despite claiming devotion to Ryan, Shayna acknowledged they were both seeing other people. In a message to a friend, she mentioned being with someone named Patrick and contracting a sexually transmitted infection, though she was uncertain about the source. Most concerning was a text Shayna had sent to a friend after visiting a shooting range stating she had contemplated turning around to shoot and kill him and play like it's an accident. The events immediately preceding Ryan's death revealed escalating tensions. On October 11th, the day before the shooting, Ryan and Shayna spent the evening at his condominium watching a political debate. Around 3 o'clock the following morning, Shayna called her mother in tears, complaining about an argument and claiming to have chest pains without Ryan's knowledge. Shayna's mother drove to the residence and let herself in. Ryan awakened to find both women in his living room, an experience that left him unsettled. On October 12th, the day of the shooting, Shayna continued to contact Ryan frequently. She expressed dissatisfaction that he had not taken her to receive medical attention for her chest discomfort, though she claimed her mother had taken her to a doctor who prescribed blood pressure medication. Investigations later revealed no record of any medical visit or prescription. That afternoon, Ryan was preparing to meet Audrey Bolte, Miss Ohio 2012, for drinks and a game of pool. He mentioned the planned date to colleagues as he left his office, expressing enthusiasm. One concerned coworker, aware of the dynamics with Shayna, suggested Ryan consider changing his locks and alerting local authorities as precautionary measures. Although Shayna did not explicitly mention Audrey during her police interviews, her internet search history showed she had researched and downloaded images of Audrey shortly before the shooting occurred. Ryan was minutes away from his scheduled meeting with Audrey when the shooting took place. As the case proceeded to trial, testimony from various experts and witnesses provided additional insights. A forensic expert testified that evidence indicated Shayna had been the aggressor in the situation. The victim was alive for all of the shots, the expert stated. The first 3 shots in and of themselves were very damaging, but he remained alive until the last shot was given. Ryan's stepfather provided emotional testimony about Ryan's distress regarding the relationship. He said to me, "My biggest issue, Dad, is I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this, to go on that date, because Shayna is always around, and I don't know what to do." The defense strategy centered on portraying the shooting as self-defense, suggesting Shayna had fired when Ryan stood up from the table and moved toward her threateningly. However, the prosecution effectively refuted this scenario through expert testimony demonstrating that the angle of the first bullet could only be consistent with Ryan being seated when the initial shot was fired. A toxicology expert for the defense testified that Ryan had both Xanax and Adderall in his system, prescription medications that could potentially cause adverse reactions when combined. The expert suggested these substances might contribute to emotional volatility. What is really interesting about this drug is that it's given to people to decrease their panic situation, or it's called what we call an anxiolytic. That means decreases anxiety. That's what it's made for. In certain individuals, what it could cause is the opposite. It could cause emotional outbursts. It would cause discontrol and violence. Former cellmates of Shayna were called to testify, with multiple individuals stating that Shayna had privately acknowledged the shooting was not self-defense, as she had publicly claimed. According to their testimony, she had admitted to shooting Ryan without provocation. The defense team attempted to establish a pattern of anger in Ryan's behavior by presenting messages in which he had expressed frustration, such as one regarding a lawsuit from a former business partner where he wrote about wanting to scorch the earth and leave this city in a pile of rubble. The prosecution argued this represented hyperbolic expression of frustration at a situation not directed at Shayna, whereas Ryan's messages about Shayna consistently expressed fear of her potential actions. After approximately 5 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict of guilty on the charge of murder. The foreman announced, "We, the jury, find the defendant Shayna Hubers guilty of murder." Shayna, previously talkative throughout the proceedings, offered limited remarks at sentencing, primarily expressing regret about the financial burden her legal defense had placed on her parents. "I'm sorry to my family, and I'm sorry to my friends for letting them down. I am sorry for the money that my parents have had to spend on attorneys. I feel like I was led on. I feel like I was manipulated, used, and abused." Notably absent was any expression of remorse toward Ryan's family. The judge characterized the crime in stark terms. "What I think happened in that apartment was little more than cold-blooded murder. It's probably as cold-blooded an act as I've been associated with in the criminal justice system in the 30+ years I've been in it." Shayna received a sentence of 40 years imprisonment with eligibility for parole after serving 20 years. In 2016, unexpected developments altered the case's trajectory. Shayna's conviction was overturned when it was discovered that one of the jurors had an undisclosed felony conviction related to child support payment delinquency from 1992. Under Kentucky law, individuals with felony records are ineligible to serve as jurors. The juror maintained that he had been unaware his guilty plea constituted a felony conviction. Ryan's father, Jay, responded to the news with resolve. "Life isn't fair, and this is ugly, but we will do what we have to do." The prosecutor argued that the juror's status should not invalidate the verdict, describing him as a very decent, honorable, honest man who had genuinely believed he had not committed a felony. While awaiting retrial, Shayna married Richard McBee Jr., a former inmate she had met while in custody. McBee, who was transitioning and used the name Unique Taylor, expressed profound attachment to Shayna in an interview. "If I had to create the perfect girl and had to spend the rest of my life with her, I would create Shayna Hubers." Shayna described their meeting. "I originally met McBee 2 years ago when I was taken to a recreation yard that was next to Unique, and we just began talking, and that was how it happened." When questioned about potential criticism that the relationship might be a publicity effort or attempt to influence her retrial, she responded, "This is no stunt. I don't see Unique as a man or a woman. I see Unique as a soul that I love." She drew comparisons between her relationships with Ryan and with her new spouse. "Maybe years ago, that wasn't the right person, and so things weren't. We didn't understand each other as well. Unique and I understand each other a lot better. Unique defended their marriage plans. I stand up for my rights, and obviously, I'll be standing up for hers too." Shayna's retrial commenced in 2018 with a new legal strategy focused on her psychological state. Her defense introduced testimony suggesting she suffered from borderline personality disorder, narcissism, post-traumatic stress disorder, and trauma related to alleged childhood sexual abuse. A psychologist testified that at the time of the shooting, Shayna's psychological condition had been seriously abnormal. Unlike in her first trial, Shayna elected to testify in her own defense. She described an incident in which Ryan had allegedly threatened her. "I recall Ryan standing over me and grabbing the gun that was sitting on the table and pointing it at me and saying, 'I could just kill you right now and get away with it. Nobody would even know.'" She acknowledged relationship difficulties, including infidelity on both sides, but maintained that she had genuinely loved Ryan despite his behavior. Shayna claimed Ryan wanted me to be his incognito girlfriend, and he wanted me to talk 25% less. He always said I spoke too much. She described unusual relationship agreements, including an arrangement where they would involve another woman on the condition that Ryan restore 10 photographs of Shayna to his Facebook profile, a profile she frequently accessed to block other women. During cross-examination, she was confronted with inconsistencies in her statements. When asked about having relationships with 10 different men, during 2012 she responded, "Sure, I may have slept with 10 guys in 2012, but I don't see how that's relevant." The prosecutor pressed on her reaction to rejection. "You do not take rejection. You were rejected whether it had been earlier in the day when Ryan told you, 'I don't want to see you,' whether it was the other times where he said, 'We're done, this is it no more, I need space.' You were rejected by him, not just once, but many times." After deliberation, the second jury also returned a guilty verdict. Shayna's attorney requested a 20-year sentence, arguing that rehabilitation was possible. However, in October 2018, she received a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 20 years. Ryan's mother addressed the court after the verdict. Ryan believed in the justice system, always, and it has not failed him. Shayna's marriage ended in divorce in January 2019. She subsequently expressed interest in developing new relationships, creating a profile on a website connecting individuals with incarcerated persons. In her personal statement, she wrote, "I have grown much since the 21-year-old girl I was in October 2012 at the time of my arrest. I'm looking for someone who won't judge me by my past, but by the woman I've become. No one really knows or can explain what I've been through besides me." She continued addressing public perception. It can be hard being judged by false conviction theories in the media used to obtain television ratings and a conviction and maximum penalty in court in terms of social media and in the jury of public opinion. Ryan's father, Jay, adopted Ryan's dog, Oliver, finding comfort in maintaining this connection to his son. When asked about recovering from such a profound loss, Jay reflected on the persistent grief. "There is no way I am frantically looking for him, or he's in danger, and I cannot help him. It is horrible to wake in the dark of night with your heart feeling as though it is going to burst from your chest and tears running down your face." He continued expressing the depth of his loss. "Since Ryan's birth, I gauged my well-being by his. My plan in life was always I would be with my son. I would be a doting grandfather, and that was my whole focus. My name ends with his name. He was my lineage. He was the last of me." As the years pass, opinions about the case remain divided. Some maintain that Shayna acted in self-defense and deserves eventual release. Others believe the evidence firmly established her guilt and that justice was served through her conviction. For those who knew and loved Ryan Poston, the legal proceedings provided a measure of resolution, but the absence left by his death continues to be felt deeply in their lives.